Okay, today is a super exciting video where we are comparing 1995 version of Pride and Prejudice with Colin Firth to the 2005 version with Keira Knightley. Now, I feel like this is one of the most contentious issues in the entire Jane Austen fandom, which is which movie is better. But really, they both do have their pros and their cons and their own greatness. Let me know in the comments below which version is your favorite and why. Okay. So first, let's talk about the visuals and sets. I feel like these are the points that people are least contentious about. Also, this is my cat. He just likes to visit us and meow. I feel like we definitely see the huge difference here between 1995, where everything's sort of more formal and I wouldn't say stiff as much as it is very proper and controlled. We also saw lighting issues. This could just be me, but even when they are in rooms that are supposed to be lit by candlelight, everything's just too bright. When I was watching Pride and Prejudice again, I now have the remastered version where you can see the texture in their clothing so much better. But of course, when I was younger, I was watching it on VHS, so everything was like kind of blurry. So it loses all the texture, but I guess this is also why you should watch it remastered. Meanwhile, in 2005, everything feels incredibly organic. There's this nature that runs both inside and outside homes. We see the organic nature of the movie, even sort of in the textures of their clothing a lot. Obviously, the cinematography in the 2005 version is absolutely gorgeous. I remember in school, I had a professor who said that the definition of good cinematography is being able to freeze a film at any given moment, and for that freeze frame to be a beautiful picture by itself. And I've seen very, very few movies that actually meet this definition, and Pride and Prejudice 2005 is definitely one of them. Everything in that movie is gorgeous. Even stuff that shouldn't be gorgeous, like when the pig is walking through their house, it still looks good. They make pigs look good in 2005. And so I feel like they went with completely different aesthetics. Personally, I love 2005. I think it's absolutely gorgeous the way they went with it. Also, I love 1995, I think more as a nostalgia thing. Next up is the costumes. Now, I want to have this huge disclaimer of I am not a fashion historian. There are YouTubers out there who are, and they're absolutely brilliant at it. So I'm going to be talking about the costumes on the very strict level of what I thought was pretty, which I know is not the most scientific categorization of it, but that's how I'm rolling today, I guess. So the 1995 version, I think, really tried to stick with the Regency era empire waisted dress thing, which actually the actress who plays Jane is pregnant the whole 1995 version filming, and isn't it convenient that they already look like maternity dresses? She could easily hide that the whole shooting, so I'm just saying convenience there. But then the 2005 version came in with natural waisted dresses. Now, it's of course greatly debated exactly when Jane Austen wrote Pride and Prejudice, what she imagined these characters to be wearing, because she could have very well written Pride and Prejudice in the late 1700s when they still had natural waisted dresses, which I do think looked better on everybody. So even if you leave out the wastedness of the dresses, I love the textures and the colors of the 2005 version. What are you doing? I called my cat a crabby old man because this is what he does all day long. He just meows. Say hi to the people. He doesn't care. Also on sets, obviously, I want to talk about the houses in both of these movies. They have so many pretty houses in both of them. But of course, the only Pemberley in my heart is Chatsworth House. And if you haven't seen my video about my trip to Chatsworth House, aka Pemberley, you should definitely check that out, but it is so gorgeous. And in that video, I talk about how one of the, I almost said servants, this is not 1810 here, one of the workers there said that if you read the part of Pride and Prejudice and compare it to the drive up to Chatsworth House, you will know that Jane Austen definitely based Pemberley off of Chatsworth House. So I did just reread Pride and Prejudice before making this video, so I had it fresh in mind for comparison, and it's 100% true. Like, the drive up to Chatsworth House is exactly like Pemberley, and all the descriptions match Pemberley, and I'm like, it's so pretty. But of course, Lyme Park, which is the Pemberley in 1995, is also very pretty. Okay, so let's get into what I feel like is probably the more contentious aspects of these versions, which is how they handled the original book's storyline and characters, because the novel Pride and Prejudice by Jane Austen is, of course, a widely translated, widely read, beloved novel by millions, and anyone who tries to take that on has a huge role they're trying to fill. And so I just want to say to both sets of filmmakers that you guys did an epic job, and now I'm just going to talk about this from the perspective of how well it matched up to the book Jane Austen wrote. Now, of course, films and BBC miniseries can have other aims than to exactly match the book, but that's what we're talking about in this video, so let's dive into this. Okay, first up is the storyline. Now, obviously, I don't think this is a super fair comparison on a lot of aspects because BBC had 5 hours to do the whole novel, while the movie had like 2 hours or under. So obviously 2005 had to cut a lot out and condense a lot, but I have to say, I feel like for what they were working with, they did a fantastic job at that. I feel like the parts where it hurt the storyline a little bit was when they had to condense the section where Lizzie is super worried about Lydia having ran away and she doesn't know Darcy is helping, and there's just this anxiety in the family. Because that issue gets resolved so quickly in the movie, I feel like we don't get the full effect that it had on her. Meanwhile, in 1995, I feel like it's so close to the original book that honestly a kid could write a book report off of it and the teacher wouldn't notice. Now, I'm not saying anyone should do that. Go read the book, guys. But if someone needed to, they could. Of course, they did change some of the scenes, I feel like, just for dramatic effect. We see this in 2005 with both of Mr. Darcy's proposal scenes. They're very pretty and very romantic. They're not close to the book at all, but I do have to say, changing a proposal scene to look more romantic isn't the worst thing a movie maker has ever done. 1995's most famous scene is Colin Firth diving into the lake. Now, growing up watching that, I didn't understand that was a thing. Probably when I was an adult and I went on the internet and I saw all these other women being like, oh, Colin Firth diving into the pond is so hot. I was like, why? Okay, so I know this might sound weird, but my whole life I'm just like, that water's so dirty. Do you see how dirty the water he's diving into is? He's going to get a brain-eating amoeba. Now, I don't know if brain-eating amoebas are a thing in the UK, but they are in certain states in the US where you can literally get an amoeba that eats your brain from diving into strange water. Now, I have to say, brain-eating amoebas are not very hot. Not only that, but he probably smells weird. Like when he runs into Elizabeth, she probably is like, you smell weird. You smell like brain-eating amoeba. I don't know. I'm just saying, I'm not a giant fan of that. I don't know. I guess I just don't like smelly guys from ponds. Who knows? Life. But it definitely has made the movie particularly famous. Okay, so now I feel like I'm about to dive into the smelly pool of talking about characterization. So again, I am sorry if I offend any of you. This is just my opinion. So let's dive in. So I just want to say straight off that I feel like the 1995 version does an excellent job of capturing the characters Jane Austen actually wrote. As I said, I did just completely reread Pride and Prejudice, and that was the conclusion I came to. Now, I really want to talk about what they did with the characterization in 2005, because I think it's really fascinating how they handled it. They tried to modernize the characters to our sensibilities here in the 21st century a lot, and one of the ways they did this was they completely changed the characters' innate personality and motivation for acting, while keeping the actions the same. So for example, a character can do the same action for different reasons and with a different attitude. AKA, a kid can do their homework. But is the kid happy to do their homework because they love learning? Or is the kid begrudgingly doing their homework because they hate school? Do you see how the characters both do their homework. But why are they doing their homework? What's the attitude about the homework? That's the difference. And I feel like that's the difference in 2005. They took Austen characters, they had them act out the same actions, but they did it for different reasons and with a different attitude about it. So for some examples, let's go and talk about these characters. I feel like we really need to address the Mr. Darcy situation. Now, first, I just want to clarify, I love adorable, super socially awkward Mr. Darcy in 2005 a lot, but that's not what Jane Austen wrote, and I'm sorry, it's just not. So in the novel, Mr. Darcy is proud. That is his main defect. He acknowledges this when he reproposes to Lizzie.
I've been a selfish being all my life. As a child, I was given good principles, but was left to follow them in pride and conceit. And such I might still have been, but for you.
He owns it, and we see that throughout the storyline. Now, is Mr. Darcy introverted? Yes, I don't think anyone out there is saying Mr. Darcy is an extrovert, but I feel like we need to recognize that there is a difference between being socially awkward or shy and being introverted. There's very, very confident introverts in the world. So I speak from firsthand experience myself as an introvert that there is a big difference. Sometimes people say to me like, oh, are you too shy to talk? And actual reality is I just have nothing to say to you. That's why I'm sitting here not saying anything. It's not because I'm too scared to, it's because I don't want to. And I feel like that is what Elizabeth hits on when she says that he needs to practice talking to people more. When he says that he's not qualified to recommend himself to strangers, I don't think that means that he's necessarily super socially awkward and shy. I feel like it's like, I'm not good at that because he hasn't developed that skill. Meanwhile, like most introverts, I've had to develop that skill. I have to enact it in order to make other people feel cared about, because when you talk to people, they feel cared about. So I feel like what Jane Austen was trying to get across is sometimes you have to go against your innate inclinations to make other people happy and to show that you care about them by being considerate and kind and talking to them sometimes. I feel like this too. That one quote alone in the book.
I do not have the talent of conversing easily with people I have never met before.
Perhaps you should take your aunt's advice and practice.
Is I think the basis they built Darcy's entire character on, but that quote has to be taken in context. You can't take this one quote and be like, oh, push everything else aside in this, few 100-page novel and base it on that quote. You have to take it in stride with the rest of his personality. Because really, when he went to propose to Lizzie, he thought she wanted him to propose. He was that confident, right? So I don't see a lot of super social awkwardness there. It's almost more, yeah, I'm pretty epic. And also, I don't have to lower myself to try to talk to these people. Anyway, I'm sorry if this offends everyone. I know everyone really loves Awkward Darcy, but Awkward Darcy, in my opinion, is not in the book. Let's just talk about this awkward thing, though. I feel like 2005 Pride and Prejudice is the movie of awkward people. They made Mr. Bingley awkward. They made Mary Bennet awkward. They were like, you know what? We just need to make everybody awkward. Meanwhile, the one person that the book describes in detail as being super shy and awkward, they make super bubbly, confident, and outgoing, which is Georgiana Darcy, which I just think is so funny. They're like, let's make everyone awkward, except for the actual awkward person. Let's make her not awkward. Yeah. I feel like they did something really interesting with the Bennets, as in the married parents. Mr. Bennet in the book is verbally abusive to his wife and his children, and he's extremely neglectful and uncaring about a lot of their concerns. And that is the Mr. Bennet that Jane Austen wrote. I feel like there was a message there about what fathers should or should not be like in the family. And I feel like in the 2005 version, they made him a lot more loving and interested and involved in his family than he really was. Now, I'm not saying, hey, you know what we need in our life is super abusive Mr. Bennet. But what I am saying is by changing his character, they're changing one of the main messages I feel like Jane Austen was trying to send in the book. And I could just go on and on about how they've completely changed these characters, but I just want to note two other ones. One is Charlotte Lucas. Charlotte Lucas in the book is very calculating and unromantic, and they made her come off as desperate in 2005. Now, I'm not saying that she's not on some ways grasping at a opportunity, but I do want to say I feel like they portray her as someone who would be romantic, who has to desperately grab on, while Charlotte of the book is just like, this works. I don't really believe in love anyway. So I feel like that's an important change. And then another interesting thing I feel like is Wickham. Wickham in the book and in 1995, you definitely see as this very charming, gentlemanly man. And I feel like Wickham in 2005 is just sort of also moody. Like him and Elizabeth have like this, we're sort of moody thing going on together. And I feel like he's just supposed to be like hot. That's it. He's just hot and moody, where in the book, he's supposed to be charming and gentlemanly. Now, does that mean I don't like 2005? No, I love it for what it is. It is a great movie. Again, love awkward Darcy. It's stunning. I just feel like what's important here is that we recognize that that's what's happened and that that's not what Jane Austen wrote. Because I feel like this move to sort of modernize classic literature has some good points, but also is incredibly dangerous if we don't recognize and understand what's happening. Because what can be lost in the meantime is the original messages, the original culture, the way the world was viewed. And part of what literature gives us is that moment to step back and be like, they had this entirely different worldview, and it helps us analyze our worldview in contrast to them. It also helps us learn about where we as a society came from. So let me know in the comments below which one you like more, 1995, 2005, or do you like the 1980s version? Or how about that 1940 version with the hoop skirts and the archery? I talk about that in 5 classic books that are nothing like their movies video that you should check out. My name's Ehle Dashwood, and this is my channel where we talk about classic literature, history, and how Mr. Darcy is going to get a brain-eating amoeba from the pond. So subscribe to my channel if you like any of those topics. Bye! I got a drink. It is sparkling water with lemon. Actually, the story of this drink is when I was curling my hair earlier, I burned the tip of my ear. So I was like doing this with the drink, and then I was like, I should probably actually drink this drink too. But my ear is feeling better thanks to this drink.